DJ LeRoy, you are on mute.
Am I? Ooh, oh, is that better?
Yes, it is.
All right, there you go. So, NightWatchman, tomorrow's a big show.
That's right. It's time to vote.
Do you already have your selections picked out?
Absolutely.
So,
but I'm not going to share them on the radio because I don't want to influence people with all the right answers.
Because remember, you're a big influencer. You know this.
I am. Yes, I'm like Kim Kardashian, except I don't know, my baby's smaller.
Are you? Well, hey, are you wearing your Spanx? I want to know that.
I'm not there yet.
Well, on that note, you know what? Let's bring up someone new to Soul Lounge Prime Time, and that could only be Tricia Fraser. Bring her up.
All right.
Yes, I see her. I see you.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, how you doing, Tricia?
Excellent. You know, they say every day is a great day when you wake up and you're
indeed.
above ground.
Hey, that's right. Because if you're not, then you're 6 feet under, and we don't want
there
that.
There you
go. All right, so NightWatchman, I think on deck we got someone else. So let's bring them on, because I believe that, Tricia, this is your first time on Soul Lounge Prime Time.
It is, right? Indeed. I'm excited to be here.
Love it. So why don't we bring up, because as a matter of fact, she tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, let's talk about voting. And that could only be Pharein Griffith. Yes. Pharein, how are you, my dear?
Good morning, gentlemen and lady, and the gentle lady. How are you? Glad to be here.
Yeah, indeed. It's a pleasure to have you. And thank you for tapping me on the shoulder and say, we got to do this, because it's so very, very vital and important that we just don't show up for the presidential, that we also do the local elections.
Well, we also got to give Pharein props, because she's been on the show several times, and she doesn't just show up. She shows up for primary elections. She shows up for runoff elections, and she shows up for the November election. So thank you, Pharein, for all you do for keeping us apprised of what we need to do to continue to use our voting rights for good.
All right. Very good. Well, you know what? I'm thinking that we also, because like Pharein tapped me on the shoulder, but before that, there was also a gentleman I know from our backgrounds, Bob. Remember West End Field number 2 back in the day?
I do, yes.
Okay, so I did not know that he had morphed into this particular badge of honor, and that could only be Kenneth Smaltz Jr. Yes. What's up,
Junior?
buddy?
Not too many people use the junior.
See, and you notice I also Kenneth.
Yes, and you are one of the few that call me by my full name. I feel like I'm speaking to a parent, and I'm in trouble.
You could be. With that said, you got to bring out our final guest, and that could only be Dr. Wallace Ford. Yes.
Okay. Good evening.
Doc.
Good evening. Yes.
All right. How you doing, man?
Pleasure to be here. I thought I'd been on the no-fly zone list for a while there, but I promise to be good this time. Whatever I did before, I'm so sorry. But I promise to be good. I won't make fun of anybody.
All right.
Yeah, that's not true. That's not true.
Yeah, we know that's not true. I'm glad you disavowed that quickly.
Yeah, well, I won't make fun of anybody important. There we go.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So that's a sliding scale, but
that really is. So, Tricia, come on out here and tell us why it's so very, very important not to just be ready for the big show, the presidential election, but why also all voting, and especially on the local matters.
Right. Well, I think it's our civic duty to vote. Many people, our ancestors, died just to give us an opportunity to vote. So the least we could do is come out for the local, the state, and the federal elections. You know, and as a matter of fact, I joined an organization, the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus, and we did a major Get Out the Vote initiative yesterday.
Wow. And how was the response?
Successful. We really got a great response, and tomorrow we'll prove it.
Okay, that sounds good. So, Pharein, you definitely have to tell me, in terms of the Public Advocate's Office, has voting in local elections, or just voting in general, has that always been a key thing of Jamani's platform?
Absolutely. We have a whole department devoted to civics and community empowerment, which I am the organizer for, civics and community empowerment. And yes, we not only, as thank you, Tricia, for mentioning, our civic duty, but how important it is to vote in every single election. Most people don't know, in the state of New York, we have at bare minimum 2 elections per year, at a minimum. And that's the primary and the general, every single year. So we like to partner with our, CBOs around the city to make sure that the marginalized community is participating. People that have English as a second language, make sure that they're having access to voting as well, the materials they need. So yes, our office takes it very serious, all aspects, even for those who are currently detained on Rikers Island.
Wow. Okay, even that's excellent. And certainly, Kenneth, I've known you for years, right? And so Black Folk Must Vote was not something that I remembered you from, because remember, you're coming from the financial services, commodities, that was your thing. So what actually lit the spark in you to actually have this advocacy?
I think it started in 2000. Remember, with the hanging chads? I think that's because when I was growing up, when I was younger, I do remember my parents, going out and voting and talking about fiscal responsibility. I know my parents were very militant, so I knew all about the reasons why we should vote, but it wasn't a thing for me, as it is not for a lot of our youth right now. But something happened in 2000 that really concerned me, and that's when I really became active. And it wasn't until 2004 when I discovered, in my family, this button that had the slogan, Black Folk Must Vote, on it, that I just really liked what it said. And I felt, I had already, had a career, and I always wanted something in which to give back to society, to the community. And this sounded like something for me. And so I started Black Folk Must Vote in 2004, trademarked the name, and then started my advocacy.
Excellent. And you know what? One of the things I'm thinking about, Dr. Ford, was certainly voting on local elections, because we certainly see what the Republicans have been able to do from the local elections, from school boards to to now, of course, banning books and doing all that crazy stuff. Why do you think it's important that we, as Black folk, get out there and vote, do our thing?
Yeah. First of all, good evening again. And I'm reminded of I was actually 13 years old at the March on Washington all those many years ago. And I do remember Dr. King, a quote from Dr. King. We all remember he had a dream, but he also talked about voting. And he said we have to get, basically paraphrasing, we have to go to a time where because right now Negroes in the South cannot vote, and Negroes in the North don't believe they have anything to vote for. Okay. And so it really goes past voter registration in my view. I've been involved with voter registration in New York City since I got out of Harvard Law School 50 years ago. It's actually 50 years ago this year. And from the time I hit the ground here in Harlem, which is where I was born, I was involved with voter registration. And I don't regret that to this very day in terms of that effort. It's important to register to vote, but it's also really important that people have something to vote for. Okay, it's not just the exercise of voting. And even when we go back to the times of Reconstruction and where people had to battle to vote, they weren't just battling to vote. That's when you had black people in the state legislatures. You had first black people in Congress, for God's sake, because people went to vote, but they had something to vote for. And we've gotten into, if I might put it this way, just a certain level of complacency with incumbency, and that we elect the same people over and over again. And what do I say? This definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. We have in Harlem any number of streets named after God knows any number of people, but when we look at things like housing, we look at things like education, we look at things like employment, we look at the kind of development that's taken place in the Harlem community that could have been very different if people had their eye on the ball with respect to development, as opposed to putting somebody else's name on another street sign. And so so we find people perhaps not as enthusiastic about voting because they don't see a reason to vote. And so I don't mean to be harsh about it, but yes, I do, because because people's lives are at stake as a result. And I've been teaching in higher education for the last 23 years, and I see young black people in my classes where I teach at Medgar College who just don't see any reason to get involved in politically, because they don't see anything happening that strikes them as being important or changes their lives. Now, I will say that Brooklyn is a lot more diverse in its leadership than Harlem has been, as had been the case in the Bronx. But we need to focus, make more demands on people. If you're going to presume to be in leadership, then you need to not only lead, you need to produce. And I think that people are really glad to lead. Production is another story, and it's not just about headlines and how many streets you can name.
Gotcha. Good one. So, Night Watchman, I saw you purse to say something.
I wasn't, but I can. First of all, I agree so much with what Dr. Ford is saying. The word complacency was one that was sticking in my mind. And it's not just about complacency when it's time to vote. It's also about complacency in staying engaged with our elected officials in between votes. Because it's not only about electing the right people and electing people who are going to represent our voice, but also keeping them accountable. And so if there are issues that we're seeing locally in your building, on your block, in your street, if you're not calling up the office of your elected officials and letting them know there's a problem, and letting your voice be heard and staying engaged and letting them know that your vote doesn't come for free. Your vote, there's an implied contract that this person who you vote for is going to represent you. And we're in a position right now in New York State where we have probably the best lineup of black elected officials that I've seen in a long time. And that's where the danger is. What did you say? Complacency and incumbency. When we have people who look like us in elected official roles, we can't now just say, all right, the job is done. Let them take it from here. We have to continue to keep an engagement with them.
Gotcha. Very good. So one of the things, Tricia, certainly I know that you're out there in Westchester County, and so certainly here in New York City, specifically in Harlem, there are certain topics that we glam onto, such as, let's say, education, affordable housing, crime. Okay. So what are some of the table issues there in Westchester that really, or Mount Vernon, I'll say specifically, that folks are looking at?
So here in Westchester, some of our issues that we have, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of these issues are transferable throughout various areas. So gun violence is important, public safety, education, and staying informed. I mean, you really hit the head on the issues that are universal.
Gotcha. Okay. And Pharein, certainly, I often kind of like joke, because you work for the public advocate, Jumaane Williams, a Brooklyn guy, doing a tremendous job there. And I would say, and Dr. Ford, you'll probably weigh in on this soon, but how Black political power is really no longer, I would say, in Harlem, that it is indeed in Brooklyn. And Pharein, have you been able to observe that?
Absolutely. We can start with the top five, the AG, Tricia James coming out of Brooklyn. We can go into the federal side. We have our minority leader in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, leadership. We also have the mayor of the city of New York, Eric Adams. You have the public advocate, my boss, coming out of Brooklyn. As far as Black leadership, absolutely, is definitely in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is hailing. We have the county leader out there in Brooklyn is Assembly Member Ronise Richard. So there's a lot of Black leadership. And then I don't want to it's heavy in New York and it's heavy in Brooklyn. But as far as the state is concerned, we are in a good spot. And I hope the complacent, I do agree with Dr. Ford, and I hope that we don't stay complacent with all of the leadership. Right there where Tricia's at, we have the New York State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, and then out of the Bronx, we have on the Assembly side we have the Speaker Paul Haney. So this is all of this leadership, and then we have the Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado. So we have all of this Black leadership right now that we definitely need to make things happen. We should not be fighting for the same things over and over again that, still that we were fighting for 5, 10, 60 years ago at the March on Washington, that we're literally, we should not be doing that. So I hope I'm hopeful that things will change. My boss, he's quoted as saying it, yes, we have the largest Black leadership, but that everybody Black doesn't mean that it's right. I'm paraphrasing, but he's on record as saying that. Yes, we do have it, but that doesn't mean that it's working for us.
Absolutely.
So I would hope that it would work for us and no longer be complacent, as Dr. Ford has mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kenneth, so for you, what have you seen? Because since Black folk must vote, we've had a couple of major, as you say, presidential elections. What would you say was one of the most successful get out the vote drives that your organization has been able to participate in?
Well, for me, because I'm self-financed, it was probably during the pandemic. I teamed up with an organization called Fox Soul. I was concerned about the name, as I'm sure all of you were when you first heard me say it.
Because we're talking about the media company Fox, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
But understand that Fox is also, a lot of shows you see on TV on Channel 5 in New York, and also NFL football. I mean, they own a lot of things. And one of the organizations they own or are a partner with is called Fox Soul, which is all Black programming. So I did my research, and they sounded pretty good, and so I teamed up with them in the 2020 election. And it was, even though I wasn't able to get out and hit the streets, we used social media, which was extremely effective in getting out the vote. Obviously they partnered with celebrities. Celebrities also help to engage the community that's really not watching politics every day like all of us are. So it did help, and it did help to garner the Black vote. And that was probably one of the biggest ones that I did. It was during the pandemic. Nice.
Dr. Ford, certainly you heard what Pharein had said earlier in terms of simply because you're Black doesn't necessarily mean that you also are for, let's say, issues that affect our community. I might look at, let's say, I'm going to Florida, and I may look at Byron Donalds. Does he speak for Black folk there, or does he just speak for that constituency, or literally Ron DeSantis and his extreme agenda? I mean, should we be very, very careful about who we put in office simply because they're black?
Well, let's be clear. And I'm certainly, for the record, no fan of Byron Donalds, for sure. But I think we ought to be clear that there are more than a few black people, many more than a few black people who will be voting for Donald Trump. Okay, there's more than a few black people who voted for Byron Donalds. Okay, the notion that there's some universal black, not stereotype, I guess, code of some sort, the 10 commandments, 10 political commandments or something like that we all adhere to, would be a mistake. There are black people, across the spectrum. Why a black person would think that Donald Trump was good for them, it would be an interesting question. And but there's a lot of them, there's a lot of them. And I think, we make a mistake to just write them off. I think we make a mistake right now just to assume. I was just watching the news over the last couple of days, and they're interviewing people in Wisconsin, black people in Wisconsin, and people say, well, I don't think I'm going to vote. I said, what do you not going to vote? And they said, well, I don't really see that much of a difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and so we don't see it here. We're not getting anything here, so I'm not going to vote. And we go back to, well, people suffered and died, and this and all of that to vote, and you're just not going to vote. And just as they're doing that in Milwaukee, there's a lot of people here in New York City who feel the same way. Okay, is that I'm not seeing anything changing in my life. We still see black people getting shot by the police. We still see the housing is lousy. We still see, the best services go to other communities. And I teach my students about this. I said, well, and I think someone else just mentioned this as well. Closed mouth doesn't get fed. If you sit there and complain about the garbage, or complain about the noise, or complain about whatever it is, and you do not call your city council member, then it's on you. Okay, and it's on us as a community that we don't do that enough. Okay, because again, whether we're living in Harlem or in the Bronx or any number of other places, South Bronx, what have you, there's communities that don't. What's the expression? Don't take no mess. Okay, you're not gonna have all of this nonsense in my neighborhood, and I will call the police, and I will call my city council member, and that city council member damn well better do something about it. I remember it took me like 4 months of calling elected officials in Harlem when I was living right across the street from Harlem Hospital, when they were replacing the HVAC system. And I'm not going to go. They had a temporary system that was on the street that made it sound as loud as a Boeing 727 taking off. I swear to God. Okay, and I would call, and people would say, "Well, I don't know if there's anything we can do." And the only way something finally got done is I dialed my little black book, then called up a board member of Health and Hospitals Corporation, and literally in 2 days it was done. Okay.
Wow.
Now I shouldn't have to do that. I'm not elected to do anything. I shouldn't have to pull that shit, but of course it did. But that's not how government should work. That's not how elected officials should work, and that's not how we should work. As they say, from Julius Caesar, Shakespeare, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in the stars, but in us that we are underlings. Okay. Wow. And we can blame everybody we want, but sometimes you just got to look in that mirror and say, well, what have I done? And so I hope that folks who are watching and listening to your program right now will think about that for me. When's the last time I did something to improve my community? When's the last time? Who is my city council member, for God's sake? Who is my state representative? Who is in the assembly or in the Senate? Do you even know? Okay, and everybody knows who Eric Adams is, but you can't call Eric Adams on the phone. That's crazy. That's not how government works. So we have to do better as a community, as a people, and and we have not been. We have not been.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yes, you can. What you got?
I think it was around 2016. I remember going to what they called it in Philadelphia. They called it Drive the Vote, and you just basically just go out and it's kind of works like an Uber. You get called, a certain person is elderly, they need to be driven to the polls. And so I participated in that in 2016. And I remember when I was doing that, everyone that got in the car, I talked to them about, what was going on in their city and things of that nature. And I remember speaking to some kids who were outside of some of the polling stations and were hanging out at some of the cheesesteak places that I had gone to. And I said, I had a camera and what have you. And I asked them, did you guys vote? It was like 4 kids in their 20s. And every single one of them said, no, we didn't vote. So I asked why didn't you vote? And they said what Dr. Ford said. We voted in Democratic, or I should say our parents voted in Democratic and Republican administrations, and our lives have not changed. We have not seen one thing change in our neighborhoods. So it's, a couple of times I was speaking to people on the phone, and I made this kind of an analogy that when people vote, they think, as soon as I vote for a person, then everything is supposed to turn around. Everything is supposed to change. I made the analogy, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I made the analogy when I was going to school in high school, and I lived in Queens. In order to get to Brooklyn Tech, where I went to high school, I had to take a bus from where I lived in Queens to Jamaica Avenue, Hillside Avenue, and then take that train to 2 stops to Queens Plaza, get off, and then take the GG to Brooklyn Tech.
Wow.
In order to get to my destination, meaning that it doesn't just take one vote. It doesn't just take one time that you go to the polls, everything changes. Sometimes in order to get to a particular destination, you have to take several routes, and you can't stop. You have to keep going. If you look, I asked them to look in their neighborhood. I saw closed stores, boarded up stores, the potholes. I said all of those things are about the fact that your community is not being paid attention to because they don't vote. So those things are going to remain the same until elected officials say, you know something, this is a community that is engaged, and we need to pay attention to them.
Nice. Yes, absolutely. So, NightWatchman, are you still looking for immediate gratification?
I've never looked for immediate gratification. My concern is that our people are not really focusing on where we are today, because we're in a more precarious position, I feel, than we've been in my lifetime, which is our lifetime, that we're seeing things recede. The Dr. King said the arc of justice bends. What is the arc of history bends toward justice? The
moral universe bends towards justice.
Thank you. Yes. And it's been bending the wrong direction in the last few years, and there is a clear effort on a lot of levels to pull back every gain that we've seen happen since the 60s, and that is a concerted effort. Now, if you look at what's happened politically, how adept the Republican Party has been at executing its agenda, even as it's gotten to the point where they're fighting amongst themselves, and yet they still get to push their agenda through. And we've seen a little bit of fumbling and bumbling on the Democratic side, and the result is that there is a concerted effort to pull back everything. And so by not voting, you're just basically helping that effort. And I don't think that there's enough sense of urgency in our community to understand, like, we're in a war. We're in a social war, but it's a war nonetheless. And we need to take it on with a sense of urgency and seriousness that I don't see right now.
Gotcha. And Tricia, with going further with Bob's comments and also Kenneth's earlier comments in terms of the apathy, the disconnect that he sees in a lot of young people in terms of doing anything. What are you seeing there in Westchester?
So it's obvious that we need to have more civic engagement in the school systems, but also people need to take it upon themselves to educate themselves about the political situation that's going on. And, to Kenny's point and to the NightWatchman's point, this is not easy. I mean, we came into this world and it wasn't easy. So when you vote for somebody, you expect for them to represent you and have the same ideologies that you do. And if they get into office and they don't, hold them accountable. At the end of the day, pick up that phone and call your representatives. You know, it's
Mhm.
important to get the youth involved, you know, increase youth engagement. They need to understand the importance and understand this is not overnight. The changes will
Yes.
not happen overnight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the things,
Um,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Doc.
I was just two quick things. Tricia, I want to compliment you on your Sir Shadow
I saw the
art
same thing.
art
I
art
was
behind
looking
you.
at that too.
That's for
Thank
sure.
you.
That's all right. Hands up for that, for sure,
Yes.
for sure. Yeah, but and again, as I said, you get to a point in life where I just have to speak, clearly. When I'm we have seen over the last, you picked the number, at least 30, 40 years of a degradation in terms, what we have a lot of attention is paid to who is the latest celebrity doing X and Y. We have people buying $200 sneakers and eating hamburgers. We have these sisters with the eyelashes and the drip and all this kind of stuff. And that would be fine if they're also doing something. All right, but people are so involved with the consumerism, and look, ever since rap, rap gets a bad rap, okay, because it started off with just another genre with respect to how to express yourself, but someplace along the line said you can say anything you want, and you can say it, you can make it as degrading as possible, you can make it as nasty as possible, you can make it as violent as possible, and you'll still make money. And so now you see people thinking, well, that's a way to act in life, and that's that's more important to me. And as I said, I talk to students and say, well, who's the mayor? Don't know. How can this be? How can this be? We're talking about a college education. Okay, so something happened from K to 12 that someplace along the line nobody bothered to say, there's local, state, and federal government, right? Okay, but we don't, to the point that Tricia was making, we also have to make demands upon the institutions. I mean, how do we have a public school system, largest and most expensive in America, and it's not teaching young people just anything that's useful in terms of going out into society? Now, if you go to Bronx Science, if you go to Stuyvesant, if you go to Brooklyn Tech, yeah, you'll be fine, but not everybody's going to be able to even go to all of those schools because they're changing the class sizes, and they shouldn't have to go to specialized school just to know how the country works. And so we're at a point where we're glorifying things that don't need to be glorified. The degradation of Black women is just awful at this point in popular culture, but we buy into it. It's yeah, that's cool, that's hip, and what have you, and it just becomes worse. So I don't want to sound like Jeremiah or somebody coming down from the mountaintop or something. But I am saying that we need to do better as a community, as people, and we start off with just making, as we mentioned before, appropriate demands with respect to our elected officials, our public officials, and also but of ourselves. Okay, and it's not too late to expect us as a people to be better, to respect ourselves, respect the communities in which we live, and not to glorify the worst nature, our worst nature.
Absolutely. One of the things that Pharein, you heard, of course, Dr. Ford mentioning, of course, Stuyvesant, Brooklyn Tech, and Kenneth. I didn't even know you were a Brooklyn Techie, like Jamani Williams. So
Yes, you did. I thought we talked about it before.
I don't recall, but having said that, let's say, and I'll let you comment on this, because Jamani Williams is considered one of the more progressive leaders there in our city administration, and certainly. But I have seen progressives who've come in at an elected position, but not necessarily be effective or have connection to, let's say, the community or the constituency, and that's why in Central Harlem, as you know, we'll be getting a new council person. Having said that. Any comments on that, where a progressive type agenda doesn't necessarily translate to effective action for the constituency?
Okay, but first, if I may, can I,
yes,
before I answer that,
yes,
I wanted to add on to Dr. Ford. It's the relationship with the voter and the elected or their office, because I am sitting here as a staffer, right? That it is a team. It's a team effort coming out of the elected official's office on the government side, but it should be a team effort also from the residents, the constituents, the voters side. And it's a 365-day relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're doing things for the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Elected officials are doing things for their constituents. Like, you may not know, or you may not have a relationship, but you can start by attending some of their community events. That's how you get to meet them. And then, you can also invite them to some of your events. But I will say, if you invite an elected official and they do not come, and they send a staffer, as I sit here as a staffer, it is still fine, because everything that, when you're at these events, is like, I'm sitting here, my office knows that I'm here. They know what we're speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to find out exactly what we actually spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a collaborative effort. Now, on to the question that you asked about progressive issue, having progressive candidates, and then once they get in the office, I want to make sure I understood that right, that get to push the progressive agenda that they probably campaigned on. And I think a lot of that has to do with the office that they hold, excuse me. So like, say if you're a district attorney, as we have district attorneys now, that you have more leeway to push things than someone who is progressive in, like, the city council, for example, because it's a whole body, right? So you're going up against, when you're in a body, the city council for New York City residents, for the state assembly, lower house, and the state senate, upper house, they're voting as a body. So and that is for the entire country. So what is happening in New York City may not be happening up in the Finger Lakes. So those elected officials are not going to see what my boss or someone out of Brooklyn as progressive may see. Like right now in the city council, there are a lot of progressive city council members, and I'm not sure if you're paying attention, but there's a lot of progressive legislation that's coming out. And I can just speak for our office. We're now up to 22 bills that we have passed out of that the public advocate has introduced, that has gotten passed, and these are progressive bills. So when you have a body that is progressive, then it can move a little better. But when it's 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, it's going to be harder when you're on the minimum side. That's what I would say to that.
Gotcha. And Dr. Ford, I saw you kind of chomping there for a minute, because certainly you there also being a resident of the community, and what I just had posed to Pharein, what have you seen in terms of, say, progressive advocacy and then actual governance?
Well, yeah, that's an excellent question, an excellent point, because we've seen, for example, progressive agendas, which I'd like to think of myself as having always been progressive, and will continue to do so. But I see things that, for example, something like ranked choice voting. Okay, sounds like a great idea. It's been tried in a few places, what have you. And so people who understand ranked choice voting made a lot of sense, and it got through the city council. And so here we have ranked choice, and it was a referendum, and people, the 14 people who vote on, look on the other side of the ballot and actually, sign up on the referendum, so it passes. Okay, and then it's put into place with absolutely no real substantive education of the voters. So it's like, okay, so and my point is, of course, that they are progressive ideas and agendas, and I think ranked choice voting, seems to be a good idea. And when people understand how it works, right? Okay, but if you don't understand how it works, it's like, well, I'm just going to vote for Bob. Well, no, it's that's not how ranked choice voting. That's why you have more than one vote in ranked choice voting. Okay, well, okay, but it's it's the follow up. I guess when you have progressive items and progressive ideas and concepts, and people get into Congress or they get into this assembly or they get into city council and they're able to get it passed, but then it's the implementation. I've worked in government for too many years in too many different positions to understand that whatever the articulation of the policy might be, it's the implementation that's always going to make the difference. And in this case, and again, I'm just talking about ranked choice voting, just pick that out of the air. It has not been explained enough to people. There's no education with respect to that. It's hard enough to get people even just register, for God's sake, and come out and vote. Now you come out and vote. Now there's this list of people, and there's no education with respect to it. None. Okay, or very little. The people who were educated about it, the people who advocated in the first place. Okay, but the everyday Joe and the everyday Josephine, they come in and say, "What the heck is this? What is this all about?" And so, a progressive agenda is great. To the extent that, and when I teach policy with respect to the agenda is great. Okay, then how do you get some kind of consensus, and then what's the implementation? And the implementation for ranked choice voting had to be, and still needs to be, serious education of voters so that you can actually have that process work. It's great to say, yes, we're like San Francisco now. We have ranked choice voting. Great. That and 50 cents won't get you anywhere these days, much less on the subway. And so progressive is great. To the extent that that the follow up is there, and that's where I don't say I have a problem with that. That's just, I think, the challenge. I'll put it that way. I think it's a challenge, and I support it 100%. But I think if you just it's like you take somebody to a sushi restaurant and don't teach them how to use chopsticks, they're going to starve to death. So we have to be able to do that. I don't know where I have no idea where that came from, Ken. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say the overriding message that Dr. Ford is saying is education. I really don't think there's a reason why people from the age of, I think, maybe 50 and up are more registered voters than younger. Unless you make it a core principle in a school, unless you put that in the schools and show young kids that voting is important, explain to them all the things that Dr. Ford talked about, ranked choice, which I also think is also very interesting. Young kids are not going to vote. They're just not going to do it. I've spoken to enough of them. I even see more on social media where African-American men and women have no interest in voting, more so now than I think before when I was going out and talking to them. And they not only they have no interest in voting, they really like Trump. I'm telling you, more and more Black kids are talking about Trump, something about his bravado.
Yeah, he's got swagger. He's got swagger.
Yeah, something about that appeals to them. Once again, I don't get it, but it does. And I don't think the Democratic Party speaks enough to our community. They just don't. When I was going out, I was talking to kids in colleges, but I found that talking to kids in inner cities, in neighborhoods, in Philadelphia, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, things of that, in those bad neighborhoods that maybe regular people don't want to go to, none of those people are going to vote. I'm telling you, they're just not. You have got to go there and you have got to speak to them and explain to them why they need to get out and vote, because they're not going to do it unless we educate them on why it's important to do so.
Wow.
To add on to that, if I may.
Absolutely.
No, right. So people, we always hear, oh, people don't vote. The youth doesn't vote. It's always the seniors. People vote, but they don't vote in the political process, right? They vote for Dancing with the Stars. They vote for American Idol. They vote for who's going to be in the All-Star game or the NBA. So they do vote, but they're tying it to what matters to them, right? And which is important, like just tying that part and why it's important. And what I have to consistently correct people, or not correct them, but have them further elaborate. So in 2021, to both Ken and Dr. Ford's point, so in 2021, the entire New York City government was turning over. Everybody was limited, except for my boss, the New York City public advocate, because he was finishing out the the current Attorney General's
Term,
a term from public advocate, right? So you have people that my boss is a progressive, but you have the progressives who were pushing for the ranked choice voting. Yes, our office was in support of ranked choice voting. But you hear people say, "Oh, we had the highest voter turnout for the 2021 when ranked choice voting was first being used in an election, right? For the primaries. It's not for the general. It's only for the primaries, and it's only for municipal races. So they keep saying that. Oh, it's the highest. So I would like to ask you, if you heard it was the highest voter turnout, what percentage would you think it was?
Who's that directed to? You tell me.
Anyone can say.
20%.
Yeah, 20, 30.
No. Dr. Ford, I really didn't want you to answer. So when we hear, because you're in the space, we're in the same space over there with Everest, and I'm over there with Center for Law and Social Justice. So we're in the same space together. But I know you know the answer. But so people, when you hear the highest voter turnout, 5 million voters, the highest voter turnout, it was 27% of voters came out to vote when the entire city government was turning over.
Wow.
Everybody had to go. Like the mayor, the borough presidents, the city council, everybody had to go. And people didn't really come out. And then to bring into ranked choice voting, not understanding that whole process did also deter people from coming out because they didn't want to deal with too many choices, right? So, but even though it was the highest voter turnout, it was 27%. It's usually like 20, 21%. But in 2021, primary in June, it was 27%.
Incredible.
That's so, and it's misleading that New York is the blue state. Like I just had a conversation with somebody last night that well, I don't need to vote. I can miss out. We're blue. We got this. We have to get out of that mindset of we're a blue state because we're actually kind of sort of on the purple side.
Yes.
Purple because it's New York City that makes the state blue. It's the boroughs and the population of the Democratic voters that make it blue. But when you step out of the 5 boroughs, you have all of the pockets of red all around the state. And you can even within the 5 boroughs, right in Staten Island, South Brooklyn, all of that is red over there. So
Suffolk County,
Suffolk County, like definitely Suffolk County, but it's all pockets. Ulster, it's all they're in. It's not a cluster; they're in little pockets all over. But we have to get people educated on the political process, how things, affect them. So I just wanted to add this last point. For when I'm speaking to youth, I don't speak to them about the importance of voting. That's not what I do.
Okay.
I speak to them. I show them how to advocate for themselves. Your garbage, you live in NYCHA and you're talking about the garbage is always piled up, call 311.
Right.
These are the things that I encourage the youth to do, and therefore it will make them want to vote. New York City, on the federal side, they're trying to get rid of to eliminate the student loan debt. But now here in CUNY, in the City University of New York, you can go to college for free if your family is below a certain income level, right? And I explain to people, how that happened. It's the elected officials that are in office right now that are doing these things. Wouldn't you want to keep them in office? The same thing with the clean slate for the district attorneys. The late Ken Thompson, the Brooklyn district attorney that was the Brooklyn district attorney. He was the first one that implemented the clean slate to get people who had lower level misdemeanor warrants vacated so that they could apply for city jobs, because that was deterrent that was hindering them from getting city jobs. Now all of the district attorneys have the clean slate going on. And I always say to people, why would you not want to keep somebody like that in office? They're doing right by the community at large. And it is the Black and brown community by large. Just having that Now people are able to get a job with the city, have benefits, have a pension, and feed and take care of their family. So I just wanted to just say that piece there. It's more than just vote. It is the relationship and it's the education piece, and you're tying it to how it impacts my day-to-day life.
Gotcha. And Tricia, certainly there in Mount Vernon, which is part of Westchester, you're blue. However, if I travel other parts of Westchester, I'll see more and more red. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. There's diversity among the colors as well. But one thing I wanted to say that's very important, that it's actually a solution that all of us could do in terms of increasing the votership out of our youth. Because you do go in certain urban areas and you find the younger generation are not interested. And I think this solution involves imploring celebrities to get more involved. They have a huge platform. They need to tell people to vote. And where's the proof? The proof is in the pudding. I've seen so many Kansas City Chief Chelsea commercials ever since Taylor Swift has been connected to him.
Right.
His merchandise has skyrocketed ever since Taylor Swift has been connected to him. So it's important to DM these celebrities and tell them, get involved in the Get Out the Vote initiative. If they tell these young 18, 19 millennials, get out there, register to vote, guess what? They will.
Yeah, but with
Can
all
I
with,
piggyback
with
on that?
with all respect, yeah, it goes back to the point that we've been discussing throughout, and I know time is starting to run out, so I'll be brief. Which is just, getting them to register, getting them to vote is a good start. I'll put it that way. But
Okay.
why are they voting? For what are they voting? To, whether it's an individual or it's a policy, a progressive, referendum, whatever it might be. Without that, then it's like, okay, fine, I'm going to teach you how to turn the car engine on. Okay, but I'm not going to teach you how to drive. Okay, so you may hit a pole, you may
Or where
hit
to go.
somebody, yeah, or where to go. Yes, exactly. So it's not. I don't think it's either or. Yeah, I don't have a lot of stock with respect to getting Yeezy and these folks trying to get people to vote. But fine, if that'll get people out to vote, great. But they need to, as I said, it's like just giving them a car and not teaching them how to drive. We need more than that. We have enough uneducated people casting uneducated votes, and which is how we get Trump. Which is how we get Trump. Yeah. Well,
Right.
okay.
Even right now for what tomorrow's election, right? People are like, who's on the ballot? I was just asked that. Like, well, I don't know who I'm voting for. Who's on the ballot?
Okay,
Right
so
now,
it sounds like an Abbott and Costello routine. Yeah.
right. So for New York City residents, we have city councils on the ballot, 3 district attorney races. We have the Bronx district attorney race. We have Queens, and we have Staten Island, and then we have surrogate Georgia. We have surrogate Georgia judges and civil court judges, which are important. Like people don't understand the process. There is a whole separate process that I'm not going to get into on how judges get to be on the ballot, because that's on the partisan side. Is how it's a whole process for them to even get through panels and to get onto the ballot. But they're on the ballot, and when people are fighting for custody and they lose their power of attorney and all of these things, they're going through the surrogate court. You're fighting for your family that's on life support. You want to keep them, but the other family member wants to pull the plug. You're going before the surrogate court. So understanding, I see people understand the process when they're fighting up against it, because then they're seeing like, oh, I got to do this. Oh, that's why that's happening. But just everyday folks don't really see it that way. So whenever I speak, I'm always speaking in layman's terms because people can really, they're able to digest what I'm saying. much more palatable. So, we need people to come out to vote in every election. As I said from the beginning, in New York State alone, I'm not speaking for no other
True.
state. In New York State alone, there is a minimum of 2 elections per year, a minimum of 2. That does not include special elections. So, and that's the entire state. That's not a city thing. That's the entire state.
Yeah,
And right
absolutely.
now, there are progressives right now who are trying to change that to get us to vote every other year.
Ooh,
Right.
every
They're trying to put the city races together with the state races together with the federal. So that will be every 2 years, and then on the 4th year for the presidential, because they see the higher turnout the presidential. But for me,
interesting.
I think differently. My thing is educating. If you educate voters that there is an election every single year and what this election means and so forth and so on, then you would then people would get
The energy would be there. Yeah.
Right, the energy would be there, be inclined to come out to vote.
Okay.
Everybody slipped out overnight for Obama's first term in 2008. Didn't know that it was a continuation. Like, they didn't realize, like, oh, there's more to this. It's not just Obama. It's Obama and the House of Representatives.
That's
They,
right.
like, they don't understand the 3 bodies of government, and that's in all levels. Like the city has their 3 branches of government. The state has their 3 branches of government. The federal has their 3 branches of government.
Absolutely. And Kenneth, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of things. I think that voting, it should be a national holiday so that everyone is off. Everyone is aware of that particular day, that this is the day that we all go out and vote. That definitely should be mandated across the United States. Number 2, this whole education thing that we're talking about, if you go into, I'll say it again, inner city neighborhoods, and you try to talk to them about voting, some of them are one family homes, working 2 and 3 jobs, not educated. Their kids are not educated. Their parents are not educated. You're not going to change their mind about the importance of voting unless you put it in the schools, unless you teach it from the beginning, wherever you start, you teach it from the beginning so they grow up with it. But I'm telling you right now, kids are not interested in voting. You're not going to make it sexy. You're not going to make it interesting. I agree with Dr. Ford. You could tell them to vote. You register them to vote. But if they're not educated on who to vote for, then they're all going out and voting for Trump. So there's a lot of things that need to be done, that if you do those things, it could change things.
I would say that while having a national holiday for voting, it certainly makes sense. But I'm telling you that the idea of giving early voting, I think, is a lot more powerful because there's any number of reasons.
Early voting and
no, it's not either or. Oh no. I'm not suggesting either or. But if you say give 10 days before voting, you can vote at any point in time. I think you wind up getting more people. People work, people get sick. I'm going to be out of town, next Tuesday, for example. But I've already voted. So that's fine. I'm sorry, tomorrow, next Tuesday. What am I thinking about? I'm going to be out of town tomorrow, and so early voting I think is very powerful. It's not promoted enough. You can go in early voting in many of our neighborhoods, and it's like you can have a seance in there because there's just nobody there at all. And which is too bad. But I think that's all part of what we've been talking about is giving people a reason to vote, and the biggest reason is that people who are in office need to produce in a way that people can feel it, and not just name a street sign. I keep getting back to that.
Absolutely. Night Watchman. So bottom line, let's say you got a little lightning round. What?
No, we don't have time for a lightning round. We got to go.
well, no, I think we got enough time for them to say how, if folks want to get in touch with them, how they can do that. So you know what, Tricia, tell us, how do folks get in touch with you?
You could go on my LinkedIn, T Fraser Productions, or
Nice.
Tricia Fraser, T Fraser Productions. You could see my email, tfraser@tfraserproductions.com.
Nice. Okay, very good. Because I think Pharein is dipped for a minute. So Kenneth, you tell us how to get in touch with you. All right.
Simple. blackfolkmustvote.org.
Excellent. Dr. Ford.
Yes, if people are interested in a little bit more articulation of some of these views, so you can go to www.thewallaceford.com. If you want to email me at Medgar College, that's fine.
He won't answer.
Yeah. So, I'll try and answer the thousands of emails.
He won't answer.
But if you'd like something interesting to read, www.thewallaceford.com. It's now as a blog that's now read in about 70 countries, and you'll always find something of interest there.
Beautiful. And Pharein, if they want to get in touch with you at the Public Advocate's Office?
For me directly, it's pgriffith@advocate.nyc.gov. But if you have any issues or concerns in general, it's get help. It's get help at advocate.nyc.gov. And lastly, I just want to say, make sure you flip your ballot over. We have 2 ballot proposals on the back of the ballot and here for the entire state, not for the city, for the entire state. Wow. 2 ballot measures. So that people are aware of that. Flip Excellent. It, don't miss it.
Gotcha. Well, Night Watchman, take us home.
Listening to Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Also live streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, and you can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, including Amazon, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify. Ask Siri, ask Alexa, ask anybody. You can find us on Monday nights every week. Thanks for coming, and get out and vote tomorrow.
Do that.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right,
guys. Thank you so much. I'll